Martin Truex Jr. confirms he will return to Joe Gibbs Racing next season. What does this mean for the team? What does this mean for Martin Truex Jr.? And what does this mean for the rest of NASCAR silly season? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove on the Go. I'm actually near Nashville, Tennessee. I'll be at the Cup race Sunday, the Ally 400. But I'm away from the studio, as you can see. But thanks to my good buddy, Danny B, some of the old Out of the Groove legacy is still here alongside us. So it still kind of feels like I'm at home. I haven't seen this exact piece since it was on a wrecker at Las Vegas last year. Good times, good times. This is just a quick video. I want to talk about and react to Martin Truex Jr.'s comments from yesterday. Before we get to that though, for all my NASCAR history buffs out there, I encourage you to go check out the latest episode of A Lifetime in NASCAR. It's a great history podcast my friend Ben White and Jerry Bonkowski do, two longtime NASCAR writers, historians. Ben has great stories and personal connections to the Petty family, the Allison family, and many, many more great NASCAR names and competitors. Well, this week I filled in as co-host along Ben, and we talked about Richard Petty's unbelievable 1967 season when he won more than half the races that year, 27 wins in a single season, en route, of course, to one of his 7 NASCAR championships. So if you're a history buff, you want to learn something about Richard Petty, I know I certainly did just recording with Ben, I encourage you to go check out the latest from A Lifetime in NASCAR. I'll link that down in the description below. Now let's talk Martin Truex Jr. I wasn't at the track today, but many great reporters, including Danny B, whose house I'm graciously borrowing, they talked to Martin Truex Jr. and he confirmed that he will in fact return to Joe Gibbs Racing for the 2023 season. Here's some of what that sounded like.
I tried to just think about all this myself and figure it out. Friends and family help as well. So just wanted to look and make sure I was doing the right thing. I never had my mind set up. I felt like it was an opportunity for me to look at everything. I've never really done that before. I just wanted to make sure if I did, if I keep going, that I'm going to be happy with that decision, and I've got the opportunity to do the things on the racetrack that I want to do. So it all feels great. I'm happy, and see what we can do from there.
I must admit, I'm a little surprised by this news and this announcement. For the last few weeks, all we've heard from Martin Truex Jr. is a lot of, I got to make sure I'm committed 100%. I've had a great career, made a lot of friends. It sounded like he was already 2 steps out of the sport, and now he's committed to another full-time year of NASCAR Cup Series racing. Now, Bob Pockrass asked if Joe Gibbs, pushed him at any point, and Truex laughed. It sounds like Joe Gibbs certainly wanted Truex back, and that's where I want to start here. From Joe Gibbs Racing's perspective, this is, I think, best case scenario because Truex will return. Most likely Bass Pro Shops will return in a major way. I'm sure Reesers, auto owners, insurance, they'll all be back in their normal capacity. So that's great for Gibbs. You have a great championship caliber driver returning with all of his funding. But it also times out really well because as we talked about earlier this past week, if Joe Gibbs loses Truex, and especially if they can't re-sign Kyle Busch, which that is still TBD, they're left with a couple top tier openings to fill. And Joe Gibbs is said he doesn't want Ty Gibbs in Cup next year. He wants to see his grandson run another full-time Xfinity season. So now that Truex is back for one more season, and he does say it's kind of a year-to-year now, we'll see what happens after 2023. We'll probably be back in this exact same position a year from now. But assuming 2023 is maybe it for Martin Truex Jr., that times out perfectly with Ty Gibbs' development, at least the way things are progressing currently. So from Joe Gibbs Racing's perspective, I think this is a win. And I wonder if Joe Gibbs had to sweeten the deal at any point, how those negotiations or conversations went. Maybe it was as straightforward as just, Martin Truex Jr. Send him a text, send him an email. I don't know how Truex communicates, but I wonder how that conversation really went down. But you can hear it. Truex sounds more or less convinced that he has made the right decision, and that's why I want to talk about what this means for Martin Truex Jr. I'm happy if he's happy. He said a few weeks ago that this decision really came down to weighing his personal life, quality of life over like money, like he doesn't need another paycheck from Gibbs. And so with that in mind, you think about his longtime partner Sherry Pollux, who's been very open about her battles with ovarian cancer on and off over the past several years. It's reasonable to assume she played a major role in this decision. And actually, she tweeted last night in response to Truex's announcement, "Hell yes, let's do this." So she's on board. If she's on board, I think that means Truex is on board. And if Truex is happy with his decision, then I'm happy. As I said this past week, he doesn't have anything left to prove. Like, sure, he'd love to win a Daytona 500. He'd love to win a second championship. There's only one driver in the Cup Series currently who has more than one championship. But when it's all said and done, Truex has won over 30 races. He brought that small team from Denver, Colorado, Furniture Row Racing, their first and only NASCAR Cup Series championship. They beat all the odds. He doesn't have anything left to prove. I hope if he's back next year, he continues to be competitive. This year, and he mentions this during this press conference, they haven't really had consistent winning speed, but he is sitting pretty good in points. I hope Truex, if next year is his last year, I hope he goes out on a high note. We've seen a lot of veteran drivers like Jimmy Johnson kind of struggle on his way out. Tony Stewart was a little off. Dale Jr. was a little off his last couple years. Matt Kenseth keeps coming back. Chip Ganassi was not a great send-off. I want to see Martin Truex Jr. go out still close to the top of his game, the way Jeff Gordon did, I'd say. Lastly, what does this mean for silly season? Obviously, it's a big, highly competitive ride off the table. I still think they'll sign Kyle Busch to at least a one-year extension. Obviously, we haven't heard much there in a couple months, but assuming that happens, Joe Gibbs Racing's lineup for next year is set, which means Ty Gibbs will get another year of development. That's huge. To me, this frees up, John Hunter Nemechek down in the Truck Series driving for Toyota, for KBM. It frees him up potentially to listen to what Stuart Haas may have to offer if the 10 car is even an option. Corey LaJoie talked about on his podcast a few weeks ago that he'd heard some whispers, as he put it, that Nemechek was interested in the 10 car. I'm sure there are a lot of good, solid young drivers interested in an SHR ride. Some people have been talking about Tyler Reddick. I think he's locked in with RCR. Again, all these teams keep their contracts very much under wraps, but RCR has an option on Reddick. That's my understanding. So if they choose to exercise that, he's with RCR for another year. So some people have been speculating that Reddick could have maybe go to Joe Gibbs if they bought him out or if they paid enough. I don't think that happens. Now, Reddick likely stays with RCR. Some suggested Noah Gragson, since he has those ties to Bass Pro Shops as well. He's been looking for a Cup ride. Some suggested he was an option. I never really saw that. I never really bought into that. But now, with Truex back, that obviously is off the table. I think Gregson's best shot at a Cup ride is still Colleague, or maybe a team like SHR takes a look at him. If Eric Jones somehow leaves the 43, maybe that becomes an option for Gragson. But I don't think Jones leaves, and so I think Gragson will either stay full-time in Xfinity or maybe he'll end up in a full-time Colleague ride next year. Who knows? Last point, I do want to touch on this real quick because the Truex news was not the only silly season news of the day, but Ricky Stenhouse confirmed that he will be back with JTG Doherty next year. It's apparently a multi-year extension. That's not surprising at all. We'd heard for a few weeks now that Stenhouse and JTG were in the middle of negotiations. I don't see any big budget team taking a shot at Stenhouse these days, so I think the JTG Stenhouse connection fits. Kroger will hopefully stick with them. That's a huge partner over there. But now that, of course, is solidified. So Stenhouse possibly going to Gibbs doesn't seem likely. Of course, now Brandon Jones, another Xfinity driver for Gibbs, likely stays in Xfinity with all that Menards funding. This Truex news really does stabilize, in my opinion, the silly season field, at least for the time being. As we've seen in recent years, middle of the summer, fall, suddenly something blows up, like a new team gets introduced. Last year it was Trackhouse buying out Ganassi. Like, there's going to be something, I imagine, this year that's going to blow a lot of the silly season up. But for the time being, Martin Truex Jr. staying with Gibbs quiets a lot of the rumors, at least for the time being, in my opinion. Stenhouse staying with the 47, Truex staying in the 19. I still think Jones stays in the 43. I mean, who else is left? Really, all eyes turn to that 10 car for SHR, which 3-4 years ago was a highly, highly coveted seat. Now, it still is, but SHR is not what they once were, and I think every driver and industry member knows it. We'll see who gets that ride, but I don't think that's going to be nearly as big a deal as who gets the 19. We now know that answer. Anyway, share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Truex fans, are you happy to see your guy back? What do you guys think happens to the rest of silly season? What is the next best ride available? Is it the 10 car? Is it something else? Share your thoughts down in the comment section below. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters for their very generous support. Again, if you see me at the track on Sunday at Nashville Super Speedway, feel free to come say hi. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing a lot of fans out there and hopefully staying cool and dry. A little bit of rain in the forecast. Fingers crossed it dissipates before then, but thanks for watching, y'all. I'll be back again later this weekend. Have a fantastic Saturday, and see you at the race tomorrow.